Recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment, Mr. Chairman, and note that we all share the highest respect and admiration for all our military from all branches. But the Air Force proposal to retire more than 200 aircraft and eliminate 9,100 positions impacts 149 U.S. installations, but only one of these base faces cuts so severe it would be closed, and that's the 9/11th Air Reserve Station in Pittsburgh. If the 9/11th was inefficient, not cost-effective, or served no unique strategic purpose, I would support the Air Force decisions wholeheartedly. But I'm afraid the attempt to close the 9/11th was misguided, mistaken, and misinformed. That's why I submitted an amendment, along with Representatives Doyle, Kritz, and Altmaier, to ensure Congress has the ability to review Pentagon decisions and enforce cost and strategic accountability on force reductions. I'm grateful Mr. Young of Alaska worked to combine our amendment with his, and that is adopted in block number 6. But first I want to say a few words about why this effort was so critical, not just to the 9/11th Airlift Wing, but the entire country. The decision to close the 9/11th is the present-day tale of the $400 hammer and the $200 toilet seat. When you don't do proper due diligence, haste makes waste. As my community has witnessed with the Air Force's attempt to close the 9/11th, the Pentagon is using a loophole to outflank Congress and ignore the intent of the statutes. The Pennsylvania congressional delegation repeatedly sought information about the decision to close our base, but we never received accurate and detailed information about the Air Force's justifications. As the home of 7 C-130 Hercules transport planes, the 1,100-plus reservists of the 9/11th provide critical mission support for global military logistical operations with an active tempo in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Air Force did not perform a base-by-base cost comparison of the 9/11th. Instead, against other reserve and guard stations housing C-130s. Instead, it did a plane-by-plane cost comparison, comparing the oldest models with the newer ones. Unfortunately, the 9/11th now has the oldest models of C-130s because the Air Force recently swapped out the newer ones for active-duty operations in Afghanistan. With 4 10,000-foot runways, a control tower, fire safety, and security support provided virtually no cost to the Air Force, the 9/11th is indeed cost-effective, while other bases cost hundreds of millions of dollars over 10 years for similar and even less services. Since 1976, Congress has insisted on having a voice in Pentagon decisions to close or substantially reduce civilian personnel on military bases. 2 statutes have been enacted to prevent base closures from occurring without congressional review. Our crucial amendment prevents the Pentagon from moving forward on a backdoor BRAC in violation of congressional intent to review those decisions and ensure base closure attempts are both in the best interest of the taxpayers and our national defense. And it protects the jurisdiction of the House and Senate Committees on Armed Services by requiring force reduction proposals be submitted as part of the President's budget request. This gives Congress 2 opportunities to review and reverse base closures if they are not in national strategic interest, both through the annual defense authorization and appropriations bills. Our language protects Congress' ability to review force structure changes and requires the Pentagon to complete thorough and accurate analysis before moving forward. But through the support of Chairman McKeon, Mr. Forbes of Virginia, Ranking Member Smith, as well as the leadership of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee who have worked with us on this issue, the underlying legislation prevents the Air Force from making any aircraft retirements or transfers in the next fiscal year. With the NDAA and defense appropriations bills, Congress will now have the opportunity to vote on legislation to save the 9/11th Airlift Wing for the upcoming year, stop the Air Force from making any decision on massive Guard and Reserve cuts and even if both of these bills were enacted, this amendment is still needed, because without it, the executive branch can close any Guard or Reserve base without giving Congress a chance to review the decision. On behalf of the 1,100-plus military families at the 9/11th, I ask unanimous consent then to withdraw my amendment, since the Young-Murphy amendment has already been adopted.